Maybe more. No, it was 26 people. We had to take with bolt action tables in place at every part of the store. That's quite a good question.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I prepared.
Because James
Workshop. Hi, I'm ED-SKaR.
I'm Nick.
And I thought it'd be interesting to bring Nick along because he has an interesting perspective on the minigaming and wargaming hobby. Because I met Nick a couple years back as the organiser of the local tournament. This is the tournament that I've been playing at ever since, basically. And it's all his fault that I keep coming back.
That is true. Well, mostly true.
Yeah.
You did some yourself, but yeah, mostly true.
And so I thought I'd bring you on to have a little chat about kind of your experience running tournaments and kind of how that's different from kind of the other people who have kind of play casual games or maybe they play in tournaments. Actually running an event is kind of a different thing.
Yeah, where to start really? It's in most situations it's a dynamic thing. You have to kind of keep up with the crowd. But if you get a bit of a regiment going and a regime and have some solid rules and a bit of direction, it's not so bad. So it's for me it was all about the community. So made some good friends. It was, that was what drove me. That's what kept it going. So if you can get that established or be a part of that and keep it going, then everyone wins.
Yeah, cool. I would definitely agree that you cultivated a nice little group. Yeah. So what kind of was the lead in to you running this particular event? Like, have you run events before, or is this?
I guess I'll start with a little bit. So I, while running the events, or before running the events, I suppose, I became, or started working for the store where we run them. That was 11 years ago or so. I started whilst doing other things. So I was doing a few hours on a Sunday. I was working for Lego, of all companies, during their expansion. So that involved a lot of travel, going to stores as they had their grand openings. You know, the mayor would be there, there'd be a ribbon cutting or something. There would be something outside. Somebody would be in a suit dressed as a Lego man. Somebody would, some company with a big van, and I'm not even kidding, a whole van of just bricks would turn up, and they would set up a soft play area, but then with like brick tables. And so my running events per se sort of started there. It started with Lego. It started with other things I was doing, and then I ended up getting a Sunday job, basically while saving for a house, really, at a comic book shop. That comic book shop had a wargaming bit of it. It was called wargaming, board gaming. Both were respectively quite small, and over the years they kind of grew. My position at the shop grew as I kind of left Lego. I went to do something else. In between that, did a bit more, and then I left the thing I did after that, and then I did a bit more. And as the years ticked by, we kind of got to just before lockdown. Things all kind of went a bit awry. Obviously, with lockdown for everyone, that's we were all in the same boat.
Just say 2020 happened.
Yeah, well, yeah. It didn't really, did it? We didn't have. We just
There's a lot
sat
of not
at home
happening.
and,
Yeah,
a lot of not doing, and so came back, kind of aggressively as a store. We put in place a few things over lockdown. We were doing pickups and drop-offs to people for stock. Things like Pokemon, things like paints, kind of just the hobby stuff and the things that people could do on the kitchen table kept the shop going, but they actually made it grow. It was a little bit of one of those kind of weird businesses that actually kind of did all right from it. It was a bit of a reset for us. We came back from lockdown, and then it was absolutely kind of hard into the events. And
Yeah.
so there was three of us. There's the owner. There's a little privately run place. Myself and one other manager. And he's big into his 40k. That's kind of his life. For me, it was always kind of other things really. I played 40k, wasn't for me. I love World War. Like kind of. Wow, that sounds a bit of a weird thing to say, but I like the history. I'd spent quite a lot of lockdown watching World War II documentaries on Netflix, as there wasn't anything else to do, and so some of it started there really. Got a bolt action starter army, painted it in a week with a couple of tanks.
Wow.
Painted it flat out for a week because I wasn't doing anything else, so I was able to do that as a work day. And then when we were kind of thinking and brainstorming, and we had a few sessions to just think about what we could do, I immediately kind of threw my hat in the ring and went, I want to do something bolt action. And we had, at the time, maybe 4, maybe 6 people we could have got. Really, yeah, like 6 people I think was where we were. If I kind of think back to the people that came in the shop regularly, there was maybe 6 of us that were like, we play and we want to play. And so it was kind of catering for that, but it was a little bit, if you build it, they will come. That was the hope.
Yeah.
Luckily it happened, but that's kind of where it started really. I had a bit of a background. I got this job, sort of stuck with this job because I just grew to love it, and got into something kind of on a bit of a whim through lockdown, and came back and went, no, I want to run something because I want to play in it, and I want to do well at something for a change.
Yeah.
Playing competitively is not my thing really, so
was there like a specific choice to play a historical game like Bolt Action, or was it just that's the game that you were playing and that's kind of what you started with?
That's quite a good question.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I prepared.
So as I said, I started with Warhammer. I tried Warhammer 40k.
Is that as an organised event or just personal gaming?
Just personal gaming, really. Yeah. So playing with a couple of friends.
I think we've all been tainted by 40k over the years.
Yeah. I want to be kind, but tainted is how I felt. I was in a little bit of a 40k is in an odd place, or at least it was for me, where at store level, kind of in the store, the level of competitiveness and the level of gameplay, like skill, the amount of time people had to put into learning the rules and things was a lot. So it was high. At home, playing a couple of friends, it was here, and I tried to learn to this, and then it's going to sound really arrogant now, but when I played friends at home, it just wasn't fair because I had people teach me, and it didn't feel kind of right. So I kind of was on a bit of a quest to find other things, to be honest. After that, card games as a gaming store, Magic the Gathering was huge.
Of
Pokemon
course.
was huge. They weren't really for me, if I'm honest. That's just not. I like the painting. I like the kind of creative side, so I needed something with that. And so I was on a bit of a quest after Warhammer, really, to find something else. So I tried Age of Sigmar. Didn't really get on with that.
Games Workshop
the other. Didn't.
What was it that finally tore you away from Games Workshop? Was it Bolt Action, or was there an interim?
I'm going to answer that with another Games Workshop game. It was Blood Bowl.
At least it's one of the good ones.
For me, it's the Games Workshop game that's not run like a Games Workshop game. The creative freedom I feel like the rules writers have and the teams have is you can feel it, you can see it. They've got a sense of humour, and it comes out in the rules and in the writing. And there's a long time between editions, and that makes a massive difference for myself. And that is one of the things that... so it was actually a friend that got me into Bolt Action, to answer that question directly. Because of my motivations with keeping going with Blood Bowl. I got into that. I liked it. Blood Bowl 2020 came out during lockdown. It was that was the one I picked up, and based on kind of the universal experience with the last edition, the time between it, the lack of rules changes, that kind of stuff. On speaking to customers that came in the shop, and in particular a friend, he introduced me to Bolt Action. We had a kind of demo game. I learned a little bit about Warlord kind of from that, and as then a retailer got a bit involved with them through kind of trade aspects.
Behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, found out just kind of how amazing they are. Really, they want to support the game. They want to support the players. There's a little bit of Games Workshopness going on maybe now.
No one's perfect, and particularly a company the size of Warlord, maybe, yes. But they have been...
I think they have to. They are looking to compete a little bit. Some of what they've done with 3rd edition, that's a little bit Games Workshop, I think they've done because they are growing and they need to make the money, and then the money they do put it back in, and they are. I always think a little bit of a distraction here, but I always think people don't realise how artisanal they are. Their resin department is like 4 people.
Yes.
It might be a bit bigger than that now, but it's not a lot of people, and there's one woman that runs the entire department.
Yeah. Side note: if you ever get the chance to go to a Warlord Open Day,
agree.
Highly recommended to go and have a talk with the design team from an artistic sculpting point of view, the metal casting, the resin casting, and the cere cast as well.
Yeah, it's really good.
And you get a free mini if you go and talk to them nicely.
That's good. Yeah. Well, I would say ask. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but ask for lots of things when you're there. They can only say no, and they are very generous. That's always been my experience. Basically, kind of had a demo game, and digging into the company, kind of, realised that yes, the edition's not going to change a lot. The rules haven't changed that much. If I learn these, I'm not going to have to buy a new rulebook kind of quickly or relatively straight away.
It's stable.
Yes.
I think that's a word that I've always liked to use in this situation, is to say that games like Bolt Action are stable.
Yeah, it would be a bit philosophical for me to say that my hobby, I was chasing a bit of stability in a hobby, because, we all went through some things where it was kind of a bit, everything was up in the air, but actually it was nice to have that, and it was just nice to have that kind of consistency, and I just knew that whatever I bought, I could use.
Yeah.
And so as a value for money thing, to be honest, with the slightly unique perspective of working in a store, there's a lot of peer pressure in a store. There is a lot of try this, or how about have this and play with me and have all of these free things, and then you end up with collections of stuff that you just don't use. And for me, it was having a collection that I can use everything with every part of it. And the game hooked me. I was sold, but it was Bolt Action and historicals, kind of all kinds of reasons, but lockdown and what I learned, just watching things and documentaries and stuff, is mainly why.
Yeah, I can say when I played my first game of Bolt Action, there was a kind of a moment where I'm like, oh, there's a lot. This is a simple, nice, easy game to play, but there's a lot of depth to this as well. This is not like 40k, where it's an incredibly complex game that you have to dig with a spade through the rulebook to work out what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Kind of, if you decide from a kind of a imaginary tactical point of view, oh, my squad should do this, that's probably the best choice. Not always, but probably the best choice. And the way that you go through the rules to actually do that is just so much smoother than 40k or some other.
And as a player that was desperately trying to be honest, do well at something a little bit more competitively, because I just wanted to be involved a little bit more. I don't think it can be kind of... I think it gets understated how important it is to be able to follow along with what your opponent is doing. And in Warhammer, especially 40k, sometimes that is just impossible. There's just too... For some, it's a little bit of a kind of mix of how much time do you have, and I didn't have a lot of time to put into it. So the fact that I could kind of turn up to a tournament and I knew that his stuff did what my stuff did,
Yeah.
and then so it was how we used it on
Yeah.
the table. For me, it just meant that I was kind of learning less of the ins and outs
detail
and
of
the
rules.
finickiness. I wasn't learning. I was just playing another person, and I was playing a game against somebody, and then we could have a laugh, and that was important to me.
So, at risk of this conversation just being, we love bolt action a lot, which is a true statement. Now that you were hooked on bolt action and playing, kind of turning to starting the events, what was the kind of the practical side of getting those events started? Because as you're working at the shop, you've got access to the tables, you've got access to some equipment. Kind of what was there needed to actually kind of physically get everything started?
So there was a slight chicken and egg situation with scenery. What do we do first? So the start point for us was we had implemented a website booking system. That was the start, and that was something that just made it easier. So that had already kind of gone on, and so from then it was okay. Well, we've got this booking system. So where's our cap? The first thing to find that out was how many tables can I make out of how much scenery we had.
Right.
Because we didn't want to put on a subpar event either. We didn't want to put on an event that had 2 or 3 pieces of scenery on a table and some cut up doormat to make up for the lack of scenery. We didn't want to do that. Our events were, not always like I always feel like it was on the community to tell us how good we were doing, but we always felt like they were. Thanks. We always felt like we did all right, and it was things like scenery and the setting and stuff. Like there was a lot of open space, and we just wanted to make the most of that, and deliver properly. So we figured out the scenery, figured out how many we could do, with the owner, because obviously it's his money, it's his. If we were
shop,
getting any more, it's his shop. It's his. Asked for more scenery. We asked for. What he was happy with, and then we just kind of came to arrangements. So the cap was there so that we could do. I think we started with 6 tables. It was then kind of 8. Stretched the scenery a little bit. We borrowed some. One of our part timers had an entire 3D printed France Normandy table with big hedgerows and stuff. So we borrowed sort of begged, borrowed, and stealed a little bit to get to I think about 10 tables. And it was just agreed that when we got to about 10 tables, I just had some money. Went to Tablescape. Shout out to them because they are good. The scenery is excellent.
Is that the Italian buildings? Yes. Those are very nice, and some people have asked on the videos kind of where they come from.
It's Tablescape. I think it's like one guy still on his own making it all himself,
really?
Which is he does a very good job.
And it's all pre-painted as well.
Pre-painted.
Yeah.
Solid. And for us, it was really important. What do we get? If you get MDF stuff in a shop, it's brittle. It breaks.
Yeah.
It doesn't last. So we had some stuff from that already, and I got given some money. Went out and bought a bunch more, and it was just the main thing to get them started was just telling everyone, advertising. And as a little side note, kind of one of the practicalities or one of the things to think about just as from a shop point of view, we moved bolt action. So we ordered some bits in, we got some more of the army books and the campaign books that were relevant at the time we didn't have. We got one of every starter army in. Again, this is where it's chicken and egg, but we put a bit in, but we put a bit in through Warlord.
Right.
And then it was like so we wanted to back it up.
So you've got
it.
You've got the capacity for a small number of players.
Yeah.
And you now need to make the small number of players by giving them access to the models and the rules to learn the game.
Yeah, and make it obvious. So we moved it up to an eye level shelf, kind of as you walk into the shop. It sort of was kind of right in front of you almost, the same way that Warhammer was, and we just made it accessible. Told people about it. We made sure to put posters up, and then I did a little bit of posting in the Bolt Action Events UK page, which I think has also possibly changed. I think it's now just Bolt Action UK, or and then there was another one that was Bolt Action Competitive, and there was another group, and then there was a bit of word of mouth after. So we did a couple. There were some people, really nice people, really lovely people. If shout out to any of those, if I do. But a few people travelled, things like Bournemouth, and then it's just word of mouth, and so it's just making sure that. After that, one of the biggest things was listening, and if anything didn't work or flow, change it. Work with the crowd a little bit, but also not run it by committee. That was one of the big things for me, that at the beginning we weren't running it by committee. I was running it, I was making the decisions, but I would listen a select few, kind of, not necessarily more than others, that's not quite what, but I would go to them more to ask
got their head screwed
and the people that were coming every month, I would go to often and say, "What do you want to see?" And so kind of so.
And then he asked me what I want to see, and I came up with stupid ideas.
Yeah, great ideas. You inspired me with a bunch of missions. One of them ended up being a tank war mission, and they've been used over and over. So. But yeah, that's the story of setting it up, really. It was check what you can do. Don't overstretch. Go for it. Just advertise the hell out of it. Which Facebook was the key. And then we had somewhere that people could book. So that was like the kind of big thing. I know a lot of tournaments and stuff run through like PayPal. But it's just having somewhere they could book, somewhere that then they've got something that's like a receipt, so whether that's PayPal or whatever, and then just run with it.
From a kind of attendee's perspective, being able to book on the website is so much better than sending a PayPal to someone's email, and it's like, who is this guy?
Yeah,
it's like the first time you go to an event like that, it just feels sketchy, but with a professional shop and the website that they've got, it's just a much nicer way of, and you have the trust as an end user, kind of as a customer.
Yeah.
You have that trust, whereas you don't necessarily have that when you're PayPaling a random email address.
To be honest, what a shout out goes to a couple of people, to be honest, but Marcus in particular at Warlord, and he said, send this email, do this X form for us, we'll send you some pricing, and I think it was a guy called Carl at the time. He was like our account manager. Speaking to him, he was able to take a bunch of photos that I sent him and put them onto their Facebook page as well, and do a little shout out with like I think it was just hashtag like War Games Workshop, which is a store, and it was just kind of involving someone sort of bigger as well, like Warlord, and just being kind of transparent with them and saying like, but being a bit cheeky as well and asking, and then they were willing to help us because they just wanted to help the community. So having that support was really helpful. Yeah. So kind of over the many years of you running, particularly Bolt Action at this event, is there any standout kind of favourite moment that you have? Okay. Yes. If I was in a slightly soppy mood, then probably my last event, because that was just quite like, so my I left the store. It was time for me to just kind of move on to a different career, and so my kind of last event as under the capacity of also kind of working there at the same time, that was quite memorable, just because it was the last one. Really, there's quite a lot that went into that. I have to say, there was one that was frustrating. He did very well. He had no right to tell me. Like he did totally the right thing. He should have done this, but it was a learning experience. I'm really sorry, I can't remember his name, but I played one of the guys that was on Team GB last year. We were the game was close, but I was playing in the tournament and running it at the same time. Kind of getting some questions from the part-timers.
Yeah. What's this rule? What's this rule?
Yeah, I was getting rules questions.
What was the mission again? Like how many turns was it? Yeah.
Trying to concentrate.
There's a lot of that at a tournament.
And I didn't see his Kettenkrad in the last turn, and what was a draw, what was almost a draw, became a loss because of his one single order dice. Because I was sort of at this point, I was kind of like, I wanted to. For me, I always had a little bit of a rule when I played that I'd finish a little early.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to kind of wrap up with about 10 minutes so I could go around and do the scores and stuff. And I played a little bit too much and just went, right, I'm going to do this, down with these guys. And then he went Kettenkrad on the objective, and it was that. But I will never forget that because I was trying to be competitive at the time, and I fluffed it.
Kind of a feels bad moment.
Absolutely, but it was funny. It was kind of done in that kind of way as well. So that was good. But in terms of good ones, the first tank war, I think it was that was something. I have to admit, it was a little bit of an experiment for me, but I think it went well.
Yeah, and I think that was
one of the ones I'll remember.
That's the biggest one that I've been to as well. I think there were a lot of people there.
And it was 24 people, something like that. Maybe more. No, it was 26 people. We had bolt action tables in basically every part of the store.
Yeah. I remember that.
And that for me was like, okay, this is like. Bolt action always got a little bit of games like bolt action, not exclusively bolt action, but they always got a little bit of stick because they weren't Warhammer, they weren't Games Workshop. It's the same with things like Yu-Gi-Oh always gets a little bit of stick because it's not Magic, or there's always that kind of like little bit of rivalry in the store and things, and some people just everyone wants you to play their hobby. Everyone wants you to do their thing.
But when your tank war bolt action game fills out the shop, we're having to invent extra tables. So to fill up everyone,
that was a nice little kind of actually like this game's kind of got legs almost. It's not just it really does. Yeah.
You mentioned that you have played while also organising the event, running the event. In my experience in the past couple of years, I don't remember you ever actually playing. So was there a point where you decided that you couldn't play anymore?
Yes, that last game.
Was it that Kettenkrad kind of ended it for you, or was it kind of a slow process?
Not exclusively. It was a slow process. Yeah, I started playing. Had a little bit of an epiphany. That was I can run as the events got bigger. I always was free if there was an odd number of players, which didn't happen very often. But as the events got a bit bigger, I was able to sort of step away. And then as the store basically grew, we grew into different rooms. It was kind of it's like in a retail park that's kind of a hall in the middle, and then the bits bolted on, and we grew and took over various
lots
bits
of
and
the
pieces.
Smaller rooms.
Yeah, and as it grew, the events all grew, and the amount of events we were doing grew, and then that meant the amount of evenings that we all had to work and things grew. And to be honest, just as part of it was kind of a balancing act between running the event that I loved, chatting to all my mates, but also balancing against kind of like a work-life balance with not doing too many. So it was, we all did one weekend day. That was kind of how we split it as shop staff. And if I did it so that I worked one weekend day and then played on at the bolt action tournament the other, I just wasn't at home all weekend. So it was a little bit of a slow thing, a little bit of personal motivation to just kind of keep a weekend day off. But it kind of got to a point where, if I'm completely honest, I could have my cake and eat it too. I got a lot out of just running the events and seeing all my mates for the day while I was at work. Who doesn't want to do that?
Bonus, yeah.
So, but I didn't have necessarily the pressure then of playing, and that pressure was, I just made that on myself. That was all put on. Nobody put any pressure, but I just didn't have to think as much. But I still kind of was in the event. I still got to be involved, and with the amount of rules questions and things as well that just kind of naturally happen in a tournament, and people coming over to the tier to ask just whatever it might be, I was still keeping up with the rules and keeping up with the game. So from that point of view, I didn't really feel like I missed out. So that's possibly quite a unique thing to me. one of the other things that I kind of touched on already is just as time went on, I just picked up a lot of games. I ended up getting to a point where I had about 18 different games.
As soon as he stopped running our Bold Action event, he picked up another game, Magic.
This is true. I've become a magicist. Yeah.
Disaster.
Yes.
Why? We've lost him. He's gone.
I've got a notification from Mantic now that I also have my next one arriving tomorrow. So yeah, Halo Flashpoint is arriving.
As if you needed proof that this man is a wargamer.
Yeah.
This is just how it is. So,
I'm just into a lot of things.
Yeah.
And my brain can't say no. So yeah.
We touched on kind of a bit of advertising, but we also touched on kind of the days that you were available to run. So is there a cycle of going from one event to the next month's event? Kind of when you book the time, you do the advertising, you set things up, kind of.
There is some of that I think was some of that was so almost kind of business as usual in a work perspective when it became more of a work thing than the first events I kind of run as sort of almost like an outside. They were separate. I was running them as me, just at the place I worked. And then they ended up being events that were run by War Games Workshop as well as myself, kind of thing. And so at the beginning, I tried in advance, so put up a couple of events in one go. That it didn't last long when we had a couple of people that booked in for the wrong one. So I just sort of did it on a rolling 1 month thing, which kind of kept, for me, I think it did keep the engagement, it kept people interested. But the balance there is not to leave it too long. You've got to give people notice. So I always try to just do it the week following. So the events were normally on a Sunday. I'd normally try and put the event up on the Monday or the Tuesday or up to the Wednesday. I would give myself of that then following week. And then people could book on, and it was just like a roll-in. Yeah,
you're still thinking of the last event and kind of the things that happened. You're still kind of on the buzz. And then talking about. And
then if anyone said anything that we want to put this mission in this time, or could we do this, or
bigger games, smaller games.
Which we did a few times where the format changed just a little bit. So maybe we tried. We did 1 month. We did a tank war, as I said, or we changed it so that it was a smaller point, it was 750 points, or it was a double. We tried a doubles 1 month and bits and pieces like that. But the cycle was the same, so it didn't matter whether it was book 3 events in at one go, or a 1 month rolling. It was basically make the event on the website. Quite lucky in that the website that we used just basically had a function you could kind of copy and paste at least like the text and the image and stuff that was used.
There's a spelling mistake that still exists.
That's probably, possibly, hopefully, it's not my fault.
It's a spelling mistake that you made probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Probably,
copy pasted into it.
You have to tell me what that is now. Calling you out that. But yeah, it was get that event up and promote, and just kind of keep on. So every now and then, just there was no real rhythm to it. It was just kind of something I did. It was just check the bookings, just check. And then I would, I say adapt is too fancy a word really. I just, if we didn't have a lot of bookings after say a few days, I would then promote aggressively again. If we did, I would promote not as much because I didn't want it to kind of, I didn't want to kind of just keep having to add more bookings on and then become oversubscribed. So it was just kind of monitoring that really and monitor bookings and then the only other thing was just involving Warlord early enough, which nowadays, as a retailer, if you run an event, you can ask for price support, and they will help you. And it's just making sure you get your order in early enough that it arrives, and that's it, really.
We're learning that. So, kind of we talked about how the routine. There was a routine that you kind of got into. So, what was the kind of the opposite direction? What's the most unexpected and weird thing that has happened? Has there been anything like really properly weird that's happened over your kind of running this event?
Nothing weird. Nothing I say frustrating. It's not really anyone's fault. Sometimes the hardest thing to deal with as a TO is just odd numbers, because for me, I think I definitely just got indoctrinated a bit at Lego, in that I just come from a customer service world. I come from a customer experience world, and I just didn't want somebody to sat out for 2 hours. I have been there in tournaments and other things, and it's sometimes all right. Sometimes you can go get snacks and go and get a drink and chill and sit with somebody on a table, or so you've got a friend. Sit there and heckle people.
Or help with the rules, as a lot of people in our group, if there is someone kind of sitting out, they'll help with the rules, they'll help with this, that, the other.
Yes, and to be fair, actually, in one particular circumstance, I have actually had to intervene in that situation. So I was the buy, and we basically had somebody. They were two mates. One just couldn't deal with the fact that the other guy was better than him, and it wasn't necessarily better. Things were going better for him.
Yeah.
And this guy had kind of spent a long time kind of going, I am going to win this. I am the best. I am amazing. And it got to the tournament, and he kind of realised actually he was a little bit outclassed. He didn't know as much as he thought he did. And so I did have to hang around the table and call out, like, no, that is wrong. Like, you actually cannot do that because it's cheating. I don't necessarily think that was the intention. I think he was getting flustered, and he was not necessarily trying to just cheat. He wasn't being that horrible. He was
just maybe pushing it.
He was pushing his luck, yes,
yeah.
And it was kind of bending rather than breaking.
Yeah, the kind of thing that if you're playing against a friend at home, like, you wouldn't even care about, but in a more formal setting like a tournament, you really have to play by the rules.
So I think, to be honest, that's probably my answer to that question, is because that was the one thing that it's only happened the once, because it was near. I would say it's near to cheating, or if not, it is. Some people would view that. If that was a 40k tournament, it would have been cheating. He would have got called out.
Right.
He probably would have just got at the very least, he would have just got a game loss. Somebody would have called him on what he was doing, in a way that would have just gone, nah, stop there. Like, he gets the game points. And dealing with that was sort of interesting. And then you get the dice get thrown down, and the guy packs his stuff up, and then he just leaves before everyone else, and it's kind of, there's just awkwardness that hangs. But then as soon as he's gone, actually, then the room suddenly gets better.
Yeah. And
that was the unexpected. That's the one unexpected thing I really had to deal with. The buy thing. One in particular, at a wargaming show called Campaign in Milton Keynes, there was one guy that actually just suggested, why don't we do like a 3-player table?
I remember. I got to play one of those.
And that was unexpected, and we dealt with it, but kind of dealt with it as a group, and it was sort of, okay, well, guys, what do you want to do? And his name was Martin, and he sort of he suggested that we do that, and I think it was probably where I heard like the loudest laughs from, and so as a bit of an unexpected thing, that was something that stuck as well. And that next time that we had a buy, I actually threw it out to the group and said, what do you want to do? Because we did a 3-player table once and it was a laugh, so do you want to do it again? And so sometimes actually some good things can come from that. It's not all bad, but there was that.
I do remember that. What was the event called?
Campaign.
Yeah, I do remember that one, a Campaign, and playing that 3-player. It worked really well there because we're not a competitive group to begin with, but that day particularly, we were kind of on show to all of them. Because we were in a public event with just members of the public walking around. It
was like an exhibition tournament almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And so having that 3-player game, we're like, let's go for that, because nobody wanted to win; they just wanted to play.
Yeah.
And having that 3-player game, was a lot of fun.
I think that one, the prize support basically went around every person as well. I think for that event, if I remember rightly, or at least most people would have got something, and I think that also helps as well. So it kind of just takes the edge off.
We'll have to check.
And I made that obvious.
Yeah, I have a video log of that particular game. Is that actually kind of dealing with that person that we've spoken about a moment ago? was that kind of the worst thing you've ever had to deal with, or has there ever been anything kind of that beats that? This guy.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, we have a friend. He's currently sat behind the camera. He is salty at the saltiest. He's not.
Salty. It wasn't your fault. I had a bad day, and just that was the case. That airstrike was the king. I'm sorry.
We had 2 games in the day. As we're speaking now, the last tournament we had 2 games in the day. The first game, James got a bye because there was an odd number of people, so he didn't get to play. And in the second game, just the dice hated him. The first half of the game, like you had the advantage.
Yeah.
And then there was a point, and I don't think it was the airstrike. I think it was the move before the airstrike, because I charged one of your Hanamags and wiped our squad out.
Yes.
That's the turning point, because then that turn ended. The next turn came along. I hit an airstrike and blew up 2 of the Hanamags, and then every die roll after that was just in my favour. And it was
So it says a lot if I say that. So I was there for a Magic pre-release. To be fair.
Oh no!
I know. Sorry, I've let the whole team down. After lunch, I was like, "Oh, I'll just go and say hi to a friend." And so when I went to do that, I went out, and he was nowhere to be seen because he had left. No, in all seriousness, he James is really not salty at all. He's just very easy to wind up.
Very, we love him really. Yeah.
Sorry. Hello, YouTube.
And thank you for helping out with the cameras.
But yeah, he. I've not honestly the shop itself, the event. I like to think kind of the tone, because I think if you're going to run any event, if you want it to be competitive, set that tone. If you don't want it to be competitive, set that tone. You just have to set the tone early and be consistent with it. And because for me, the community was the big thing. Like, it needed to be community driven. Because it was, we really had no problems. And the sort of almost borderline cheating guy that I was mentioning before was very early on in running these events, like very early on, before the format had even been really fixed into what it became. And the community was half the size, if not a third of the size as it is now. And so I think, to be honest, he probably just stuck out more because it was a smaller group. But you just deal with it in the moment, and then you almost kind of just have to pretend it didn't happen after. You know, kind of, you can't hold it against that person unless they've done something heinous, which we honestly just never had. We were very lucky.
Yeah.
We had a really nice group, really nice community, and it never came. Nothing came up.
Yeah, I will say one of the things that really drew me kind of personally to your tournament is in your rule set, you actually specify that unpainted models are welcome. Yeah. And that's part of the kind of, you're setting that as a not a hyper competitive event. You're kind of, it allows new players to come in much more easily because they can just glue some arms on and get onto the table.
They by no means were learning tournaments, but there needed to be room for people to learn. Otherwise, there's then a barrier to entry, and that is not that is one of the things that Bolt Action for me didn't have just as a game. So you kind of need to go with the spirit of it as well. So like 40k, it makes sense that the tournaments are competitive because that's the spirit of the way the rules are written. So go with the flow a little bit, you know, and then if you don't like that, play something else. And I think that's, so I kind of just went with Warlord's flow almost. That's kind of what they set for me, and I just followed it, or I had something to follow. And then I like to think I put a bit of my personality in as well. Like that is something that, you know, not everyone can get everything painted straight away, and people want to use the toys. We all play toy soldiers. People want to But people have bought 20 quid something, they're going to want to use it. So
yeah, especially the 40k players who are used to spending like £400 every month. They'll spend £400 and have 3 armies, and it's like, oh, can't paint all that. Can't paint all that.
And I'm a massive perfectionist, which makes me very aware that people aren't. And
I am not a perfectionist in the slightest when it comes to my wargaming armies.
You need to just kind of, you can't, if it's a Rubicon model over a Warlord model, and the sizing might be different, or it's you've got the Warlord models have the tiny drivers, or does it matter that the scale's slightly out?
It doesn't affect the
yeah.
rules or the playing of the game.
It should be about the playing of the game. Yeah. That was the tone I tried to set, I think.
And that actually nicely leads us on into a question I had from one of my audience.
Okay.
So I put out a community post saying that I would be talking to a tournament organizer, and everyone could ask questions or suggest things that I could ask you or talk about in this conversation. And a grand total of a single person responded. So thank you very much to long-time subscriber Andre van der Wiles, who has appeared very many times in comments and discussions before. And they ask, I have never played anything in tournaments and don't know much about it. However, I'm curious as to how much freedom or control an organizer has regarding the allowing of proxies. Are they always banned, and does it differ between brands?
That's a really good question. In my experience, I genuinely couldn't say how much they are banned. So when you say always banned, I would probably say that's something that's probably set by the stores that they get played in. And I think there is a lot of, I don't know quite the word of this, there's a lot of that kind of attitude to proxies that comes from a 40k world. And that, or I say 40k world, I think just a general Games Workshop world.
Yeah.
Because James
Workshop.
He has done his Christmas advert, hasn't he, James Workshop?
Yeah.
Because Games Workshop, they have this format, this structure, whatever you want to call it, this kind of accepted way of doing things. That is, we just don't allow proxies. You must buy our pieces to play the game. You must have our miniatures. Even though they are making people buy their rulebooks, their codexes. Nowadays, it's their app as well.
Yeah.
They still make them, and they are a business. And they are a publicly traded business. Are a little bit unfair with Games Workshop on. They have people that aren't the players and aren't the customers to please, and that puts a lot of the creative people in a very weird position. There's a very, very good video that includes 3 people from Games Workshop that talk about this very thing. It's like 3 hours long, but I feel like that in the middle of this video, they get to a point where they open up a little bit, maybe more than they should, maybe more than they would be allowed to. But it's in the middle of like a 3-hour video, and they all sort of say how actually, as creatives, they were not allowed to do things, and somebody who is in a management position, who is like in a finance position, kind of comes along with a number and says you need to make this decision because of this number, but that number doesn't, or the creative and the number, they don't relate to each other at all. And it's just where they've got shareholders, so some of it comes from that. I get it. As a store, we never really banned proxies.
Have Warlord ever kind of mentioned that to you in any of your communications with them about when you communicate about prizes or about the running? Have they ever mentioned it?
No. Nothing has come from Warlord officially. I think at least possibly nowadays, like maybe the one that's gone past this year, I think they did have something about 3D prints at their GT, I think possibly, but
that's the one that's at their venue.
No, it was it's like the London GT one, I think.
Right.
I could be completely wrong on that. People come into the shop and tell you things, and sometimes it's it's
hearsay and rumor.
Yeah, and I don't fact check everything, so because you can't. But so nothing's ever officially come from Warlord in relation to bolt action. We as a store worked very closely with the gaming group locally. That I actually sort of sit on the committee for as well. So there's lots of crossover there with basically like kind of the two police forces, if you like, of proxy miniatures in a tournament setting, and neither one, the gaming the gaming group, the committee of the gaming group, and the shop itself enforced a no proxies rule at any point, even in Warhammer 40k tournaments. The biggest thing in Warhammer tournaments is base sizing. If the base sizing is right and the height is right, don't model for advantage.
I have never understood the base sizing, because I have played games with all sorts of weird base sizes, and it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter.
I've always thought this, and there are people that tell me I'm massively wrong, because it matters for things like combat and the amount of models that can get around a circle, and so you then in 40k you get more attacks. But then that's where certain games do the abstract. They do the abstractness of what is happening or what would be happening in the real world in terms of a bunch of guys having a fight. They just do that better. So, and Games Workshop again have to balance against
Games Workshop do it worse. Is the implication?
Well, they have to balance against people that would argue the toss.
Take advantage.
If you take advantage, if you've got three models against a base this big, and you can get three models there, but actually you could squeeze in a fourth. That's an extra dice or an extra couple of die or whatever it might be into the pool, and that's going to make the difference. And in a lot of other games that are a bit more abstract, it doesn't matter. So we didn't enforce it because, to be honest, it's just too difficult to. Any shop that does, again, I get it. But a lot of shops have now branched into having their own 3D printers and things now as well. And in games like Bolt Action, it's Bolt Action in particular, it's impossible. You have to allow, at least second edition, you have to allow proxies, because Warlord do not make all of the models they make rules for.
Yep.
And you couldn't play the full extent of the game if you didn't allow somebody to bring a 3D printed Japanese Type 95 tank, or some of the little small Japanese tanks that fit in the armoured car slot.
The 92 tankette, but I have one of them.
Yes, yeah, with the HMG and the little MMG. You couldn't.
James's favourite.
It's a great vehicle.
It's great, yeah. On a, if you're ever playing sectors, get it in a corner and just put it on ambush the whole game. They won me a game once, just a single model.
And Recce.
And it's got Recce. But and personal opinion, I think that should be allowed. But
yeah, I think rolling back to the question that Andre asks, from my perspective, and I know this is interviewing you, I'm now going to talk for a bit. The wargaming hobby is like three hobbies in one, and one of those is the modelling and the sculpting and the 3D printing and all of that. Therefore, whenever you go to play the gaming side of it, proxy models and that sort of thing is the default. Sure, you want to buy a whole bunch of the stuff for that specific game.
You could argue if you've painted your Japanese army in the wrong colour uniform, they are proxy models. So it's also, where do you draw the line?
Yeah, that
comes down to sometimes, if somebody might be colourblind, they might just not have access to all the paints, but they want to get an army finished, or you have to kind of lines. You have to draw a line somewhere, and so for me, the line is kind of anything that's offensive, because just why are you bringing that, unless it's, if you're bringing something that's offensive to a tournament setting, you're probably just doing it for a reaction.
Maybe, yeah.
And that's the kind of proxy that a TO would step in and say no, and it has happened a lot. And again, I'm going to go back to games, but I think that's just because of the sheer amount of people that go to Games Workshop tournaments. There have been things where there have been like symbols printed onto things or whatever, and tournament organisers have had to go, no, you can't use it, and I think that's fair. But if it is trying to be the thing, and it's trying to be kind of an accurate representation of the thing. So it's a tank or it's a model, but he's got all of my American NCOs have Tommy guns. They all have Thompsons, but I do not pay the points for them ever, and I never take them. They're all rifles. They are proxy models, but I make it super clear at the beginning of the game that is what they are, and that having Thompsons and they're all airborne, so they have the little like medical patch thing on their helmet. That is just, and that only exists so I can distinguish who they are. And that used to be for old rules. If somebody, the sniper, if somebody wanted to take out the NCO.
There's another kind of related subject when it comes to proxies, particularly when we discuss something like Games Workshop, where everything in there is stuff that doesn't exist, and it's their creative, like the people who have worked at Games Workshop have invented all of these creatures and soldiers and armies and whatever. They're under copyright.
Yeah.
And so if you have a proxy model that's a direct copy of that copyright, that's not just something that's necessarily banned by the tournament, that's something that's kind of that might even be pushing into the territory of actually being illegal. But if you've got something that's, this is just a space soldier in a suit of heavy armour, that's a proxy model. Personally, I think that's kind of the point of the wargaming hobby and the creative side of things. But then looking at bolt action and historical stuff and World War II stuff, all of that is out of, with one exception, all of that stuff, it's the Thompson, all of that stuff is out of copyright. And so you can't claim, this one company, you have to use this white scout car from this company because you can't use it from that company, because neither of these model companies own the copyright on that vehicle or the rifle or the anything else. And the Thompson submachine gun, as far as I'm aware, is the only thing that's that old that has been kept in manufacture long enough so that there is a copyright on that. Which is why kind of my other hobby of airsoft.
I did not know that at all.
There's a lot of hoo-ha about copyright over airsoft guns representing the
there's a big... my thing as I started to diverge into different things was I got really into indie games and ended up with just loads of rule books for indie games. And my whole thing was minis agnostic. Yeah. But every game is minis agnostic.
Yes.
And to be honest, I think Ash Barker has put it better than me. But every has said it. But every game is minis agnostic. They all are. There are a bunch of people that make content that's this anti-Games Workshop or play this minis agnostic game. But you can use Warhammer 40k rules with stormtroopers or battle droids from Star Wars if you wanted to, because the model is just represented. If you see that stat line and you go, actually I think a stormtrooper, if he was trained, could be a space marine, because they are they're tough soldiers. If they learn how to shoot, then do it. do what you want. The good point. Otherwise, actually, they're Imperial Guard.
Stormtroopers and the what are the Imperial Guard Stormtroopers called? Because they've changed the name of them now. Scions. Scions and Imperial Stormtroopers. Very similar in terms of their capability and kind of their armour, their weaponry and stuff like that.
I also think it is a little bit rich of Games Workshop to
I know what you're
enforce copyright when they copied a bunch of things to get to said copyright. Their material exists because it was inspired heavily by things that other people did. Lord of the Rings in particular.
On the shelf behind me is Frank Herbert's Dune series. So there's
anything
that.
Tolkien touched, really. Let's be honest. Although he never really described anything, did he? Is it Legolas? Legolas's description in the book is Legolas, and it doesn't really do the job, does it? But no, just a final point. I think if you are running a fully proxied army or something, and you've got some things that really stand out as different for some reason. Having said that, in bolt action, I honestly couldn't think what that might be. I think it should be run past the TO. I think that's just fair, but I don't see a situation where anyone from Warlord or anyone that would run anything that Warlord do, so even if it's a Hail Caesar tournament, which is not going to exist because that's not the nature of that game either, it's not a tournament game, but I don't see a situation where they would be telling you that you couldn't use it. And if you're playing at like like a FLGS rather than a Games Workshop or a big GT or something where you've got to pay loads of money for a ticket and it's sponsored, if you're in a sort of small local thing, and sometimes local things are sponsored as well. We, as a gaming club, rather than a store, got sponsorship from a couple of things with a few things we did, for like T-shirts and stuff like that. But none of these companies or people are going to make you not use something that you want, because it is a hobby. People are doing it for fun, and if they are, I would kind of be looking to kind of question possibly other things that they will be doing in the running of that event or that store, and it might just be a case of kind of grabbing like the store manager, maybe if the TO is separate, and just having a word and saying kind of, what do you think, like, is this, because it happens in their store. The TO may have a bee in their bonnet, which might come out, everyone's going to be different. People have different personalities and it all, so I would just say kind of just chat. Just talk it through. Everyone can be kind of reasoned with if you're also reasonable, and you just chat to them. And if it's bolt action in particular, if the question is specific to bolt action, I can't really see a situation where anyone would say no for any reason. And that comes down to even things like basing. A lot of people on the competitive scene base their mortars separately, and their machine gun separately. The mortar will be on a 25mm base. The 3 crewmen will be on a 25mm base, so that they can all be placed an inch away from each other. That is a form of proxy. Warlord, supply you with a base it is supposed to be on. If
Although
that was a Warhammer game,
it's in the rules of 2nd edition once, and it's in the rules of 3rd edition 4 times, that you can multi-base or separately base however you want, and just the 25mm circle around them is considered to be where they are.
But as far as I'm aware, at least, the base sizing in things like 40k isn't necessarily mentioned. It's just what comes in the box.
No,
it's what it used to.
In 40k, every unit has a base size that comes with it, and sometimes they change, and people have to rip the models off of the bases and rebase them. Orcs keep happening to Orc players. I'm not rebasing my 200 orcs down there. That is not happening. They can play 3rd edition for the rest of the time.
So I hope that answers the question.
We talked about it for 20 minutes.
Really, do what you want. Is what I think the opinion should be. I think
in any case when someone's attending a tournament, read the rules, and if there is stuff in the rules, kind of have to follow the rules. But also, if there's something vague or something you want to clarify, talk to the TO, send them a message.
Yes, and really, just the one thing as a TO, please, just whoever it is your messenger, just don't do it the night before or the morning of. Just give if you're really unsure about something, really and you're really just not sure that it might be allowed, then just give them enough notice to respond. That would be the only thing I would say, because then the only time that we've had to as a store kind of get involved in that thing, they had to sort of send pictures, and it was I think like a demon prince or something, and it was like this guy spent ages kind of doing this conversion, but it was like not the right size, but we all thought it was really cool, so we were like, yes, use it, because that looks amazing. And it was
correct response.
Yeah, and it was like bright pink, and it had like wings, but the wings were kind of, it was really, so it was just like, yes, it's pink, and it's just cool, and it looks like the rest of your army, to use it. Just give them time to respond, because they may ask for photos. Just be prepared for that, and don't get offended if they do. They don't necessarily know or have seen everything. They might not know what you're talking about straight away. As a TO, I think one of the things that some people forget sometimes is that most of us. There was obviously a time where that changed for me, but most TOs do it as something that is a supplement to everything else going on in their worlds. So just give them time. That's it.
So just for the last couple of questions, do you have any advice for anyone kind of watching this if they wanted to start running an event? Get stuck in and advertise.
Do it. start somewhere. I've said this like 3 times for some reason in the last 2 weeks, but don't know why. But the best time to start anything was last week.
Yeah.
The second best time is now. So just start. Write something. Write the start of a rules pack. Google other rules pack. That's how I started. I didn't write my own from nothing. I started from kind of things that had gone before. Have a chat to a venue. If you don't have a local gaming store, or your venue might be something like a leisure centre or a church or something, again, just have a chat. Put messages out on Facebook. Put casting calls out for people with stock, people that want to help. Get other people kind of involved and go from there. And the only way you'll grow it is by doing the first one.
Yep.
And if you can get some people to help you, then you can just grow it as a group, and then you don't also take on all the work. So just start.
I've heard this in the music scene. The best advertising for your second gig was your first gig.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, 100. Yeah. And don't expect it to be perfect. Don't expect too much of yourself from the first one, because things will go wrong. It's very appropriate for talking about a historical game, but there's always that thing is that no plan survives first contact with the no anything in a kind of retail or an event setting survives first contact with the public. Nothing does. So just be prepared for that and roll with it. That would be my advice. And sometimes rolling with that is just throw it out. Don't be scared to kind of just sort of almost throw it out to the group. Say you get the odd numbers at your first tournament. Ask people what they would want to do, or book. If you've got a booking system and it's your first one, maybe look to book odd numbers, so that you'll play as the even number. But if you only get odd numbers and you actually get an even number of bookings, then you don't play, but accept that you might not play for the first one, run it, see how it feels, and then play in the next one. And just make a bit of time to do that. That's it. Yeah.
So on the opposite, kind of the flip side of that question, do you have advice for kind of attendees, people wanting to come to an event, and what they should do, what they shouldn't do? Like, go.
Yeah.
Go to an event. It's fun.
Support your friendly local game store.
Look for one. That James is spot on behind the camera. If you can find a local gaming store that's got one on, it means a lot to them to have an event filled. Listen to the TO. Again, everyone in my experience has been really nice. We've never had any of that, but there are some events where sort of people will. These events can be loud. Halls can be loud. Sometimes people don't hear, but just kind of be aware on the day that you might need to move around. Top tip: take a tray. Have a tray. Have something to move your minis from table to table, because especially in like a local gaming store, you'll probably be asked to leave your bag and your stuff somewhere else. The store will look after it. I'm sure they'll make sure it's safe, but make sure your models are just on something that's movable. You don't want to be packing them away every time, getting them back out.
I'm in the bad habit of moving them around on my rulebook, and it's always a problem, because it's only like at the end of the deployment where I actually get to read my rulebook.
Bring everything you need. It's a lot easier when everyone does that. Also, just because I think in third as well, I can see it going this way. If you get the opportunity to make some objective markers, make 5 or 6 objective markers and just have them ready, because not everyone is going to have those, but a lot of tournaments will need them or request them of you. If just make it part of your army building, make it part of your list building. When you make a list, or you buy a new army, make some themed objective markers as part of that. Save some bits from your sprues for that, because you will need them.
I have some videos on this exact subject.
Yeah, apart from that, find one, go to it. It means a lot to your local store. If they don't necessarily charge a huge entry fee, even if they do, their entry fee is probably going towards any prize support they're giving out. Look at buying a drink or some lunch there.
Yeah.
But same for the TO thing. Don't expect to go and win it unless you've gone to loads, and because you don't know who else is going to turn up. Don't go with an attitude that means you're going to come home disappointed. Go, just enjoy it.
To an extent, and this is something that I've said before, when you're booking to go to an event, kind of read the rule through, work out what's the points, what's the expectation of it as well, like we mentioned earlier, whether it's a competitive or a more casual event, and kind of go in that mind and just accept that you're gonna lose.
Most rules packs will probably say something on that, but I think if you can turn up kind of just expecting to have a fun day, then you will, or you're at least more likely to. If you're not sure about an event, you're never going to be sure unless you go to one, and that's the same kind of as something else we mentioned earlier. You've got to start somewhere, go to one, see. You're not gonna know unless you find out. Unless you make a start.
You mentioned bringing all of the useful things, so I just jumped off camera and got this. This is my bolt action bag. It has tape measure, order dice, a bunch of D6, some generic objective markers, and some other things that you used regularly. And so, as long as I've got this and my models, I've probably got everything I need. I should do a video on this. So we come to the end of our little discussion here, but just like at the end of all of the events, you do prizes, and so you hand out prizes, and we've talked about like the prize support from Warlord Games and some other things, and whether the entry fee can often attend to that as well. But today, my assistant behind the camera is just going to get up and grab something and pass it over to me, because we actually have something for you as a prize.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. That is so good.
So I do have some pictures of this to show, but it is a little plinth
that
says
really
thank you. It has a little
bolt action rulebook.
It has a
my god!
It has a wargaming table with a bolt action rulebook that I free-handed the front cover of the second edition rulebook on.
Brilliant.
And if you look at the three characters around the table, we've got a British general leaning on the table. We've got a German guy who's got a Coke bottle masterfully sculpted by James, and the German Armies of Germany second edition book. And at the back is the tournament organizer himself.
Noticed the hair.
With his lovely silver hair and sunglasses on.
Best part is they're removable and therefore usable in your bolt action.
Yes. New general right there. I've always avoided kind of doing grey hair on miniatures because I think people will be like, are you trying to paint yourself? That is amazing.
Yeah. Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming to talk to me today, and thank you so much for running the event that I have had so much fun at for the last few years.
You're welcome. It's been great.
Yeah. So
thank you, everyone.
With that done, we will go off and have some pizza, I think. Yeah. Thank you very much for watching. I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and we'll see you next time. Hi, I'm ED-SKaR.
Hello, I'm Nick.
And I thought it would be interesting to brickning. I fucked up already. That's a good start.
Glad it wasn't
me. Brickning.
It wasn't me first. That's.
Oh, you should see my edits. They're terrible. Right, let's start. And I've done the terrible thing of not looking at the next question before, while you were talking, so I'm going to have to read this.